Start with the Philadelphia Eagles. So Jalen Hurts did not play in this game due to a concussion. They start Kenny Pickett. Eagles still roll the Cowboys 41-7 to clinch the number 2 seed in the NFC. The big news, of course, was Saquon. I guess first I'll start with the bad on Saquon. I honestly could not believe that they ran the tush push at the goal line with Kenny freaking Pickett, who was taking pain-killing injections in his ribs. Like, I couldn't believe it. One of the reasons that I liked Saquon so much in DFS in week 17 was because I thought that goal line work wouldn't go to Hurts. I mean, wouldn't go to Pickett. It would go to Barkley with Hurts out, and they wouldn't do the tush push, but they did. And, looking back, it's so crazy that we even question now whether they would keep doing the tush push with Jason Kelce retired. They're doing it with Kenny Pickett, and they have Saquon Barkley back there. So that was the bad. The good, though, Saquon still got there. 31 carries, 167 yards, goes over 2,000 yards. Pretty special accomplishment. Only 8 other players in the NFL history have ever gone over 2,000 rushing yards. Evan, what'd you see out of the Eagles steamrolling of the Cowboys on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of went as I thought it would regarding Saquon, where they really put their pedal to the gas and got him a ton of work. But apparently, you're hearing that Saquon is not going to play in the final game. I mean, he only needs 101 rushing yards to break Eric Dickerson's record. I understand that running backs had a little bit of a resurgence this season just because so many of them stayed healthy. And the running game in general had a little bit of a resurgence. But the way that the league has been going over the last 20 years, there may never be another player that comes within this close striking distance of breaking that record. It's really disappointing to me if the Eagles opt to rest Saquon Barkley, because this is a special record. That I understand, though, one of the things that makes the Eagles' running game great is their offensive line. So if you are playing Saquon, you probably also got to play the entire offensive line, and you have to have a regular game plan. It's just like, it's against the freaking Giants. Yeah. It's only 101. I think he'd get there by halftime. I don't know. What are you hearing?
I don't know. The Eagles have not said anything. I think they're going to sit him, though. I really do, because they're going to have a playoff game in 6 or 7 days after this, and they have Super Bowl aspirations. And earlier in the season, Saquon declined to go back in a game to break a record. He was like, let the young kids eat. I do not think that he's going to play in this game. And also, in defense of Eric Dickerson's record, Dickerson did it in 16 games. Saquon has now played 16 games, and so I'm not one of those people that it's like, throw it out. He played 17 games versus 16. But I do think that there's something to be said for, hey, Saquon got 16, Dickerson got 16. So I do think that Saquon will sit and the Eagles will sit all of their starters. Market reflects that. Eagles are only favored by 3 right now in a home game against the Giants and Drew Lock here. So, yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if the Eagles had gotten that 1 seed and they had a bye coming up, then we might be talking about something different. I don't know. It's disappointing to me because I would like to see history like that, but I do understand it.
The other story to me from this game was Devonta Smith. It's too late for a lot of fantasy teams, including mine, but healthy and out-targeting A.J. Brown here. This was Devonta Smith's second 100-yard game in his last 3. Just a reminder that Devonta Smith is a baller, and when Dallas Goedert is out, it's so condensed on Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, and Devonta Smith can have these huge games. So, yeah, excited for Devonta Smith here in the playoffs as well. Number 2 story is the Tampa Bay Bucs. I mean, home against the Panthers, maybe the best possible spot. Bucs did not disappoint. Baker was absolutely on fire. I mean, maybe the best game of the season for Baker in a season of incredible games from him. Bucs put 48 points on Carolina, and then later that day, the Falcons lose. Bucs now have the lead in the NFC South and can clinch it with a win in Week 18. Evan, what do you think of Bucs steamrolling of the Panthers on Sunday?
Yeah, they are a dangerous team. I mean, the Bucs, they have issues defensively, especially in terms of their pass defense, but offensively, they can score with anybody. Bucky Irving went off. He looks awesome. He was incredible in the passing game in this one. And also, they were down guys. I mean, they were down Sterling Shepard. They were down Cade Otton. But they look. I actually thought that this was maybe a dangerous game because the Panthers have been playing better football for an extended stretch, but the Bucs really took care of business. And in Week 18, Mike Evans needs 85 yards to clinch his 11th straight 1,000-yard season. That's very, very doable, especially against the Saints. A home game for the Bucs against the Saints. They win this. They clinch the Falcon the NFC South over the Falcons, and it really should be smooth sailing against a very, very dead Saints team.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and Bucks are a massive favorite now to win this division and clinch their spot, their spot in the playoffs. One usage note, I mean, it kind of went back and forth for a little bit between Bucky Irving and Rachaad White. It's gone now. I mean, we talked about that Rachaad White Week 16 fumble and how that might impact Week 17 usage. In this game in Week 17, Bucky 20 carries, Rachaad White 8, Bucky 4 targets, Rachaad White 1. Snaps were Bucky 42, Rachaad White 28. And they asked the coaches about this after the game, and Todd Bowles said the play speaks for itself. Rachaad is a very good back, he said, but Bucky was playing better. And that's just like the refrain. Bucky's been the better back for a while now. And so Cat is completely out of the bag on Bucky Irving. Last thing I wanted to say, Evan, made fun of the Jalen McMillions nickname a lot. Turned out, actually, Jaden McMillions here, 2 touchdowns on 5 targets. I think it helps. No Kate Otten, no Sterling Shepard. You're playing the Panthers, but still, Jalen McMillions really came on down the stretch here.
Really came on.
Ended up being a great pick, yeah.
Big time player in real life. He's going to be a big time part of their playoff offense.
All right. Third story, the Giants, man. Honestly, I did not think that Drew Lock had this in him. And I know I've waffled and gone back and forth on Drew Lock, but given the way that Drew Lock has played this year and the way this offensive line has played, I did not think that Drew Lock had this in him. But you got to give him credit. I mean, he turned 24 dropbacks in this game against the Colts. He only dropped back 24 times. And Drew Lock put up 309 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. Of course, Malik Neighbors is part of the slate-breaking teams to put a bow on his insanely impressive rookie season. I couldn't believe this one, though, Evan. What do you think of Giants actually going nuts here with Drew Lock at quarterback against the Colts?
Yeah, and Drew Lock, I mean, this was like, I'm not exaggerating when I say that this is one of the most efficient quarterback performances of all time, because he did this. Drew Lock had 4 touchdowns and 309 yards on 23 pass attempts. So, I mean, and this came out of nowhere. Everyone knows it. But Malik Neighbors does. I mean, he had obviously a huge hand in it. 105 of his 171 receiving yards came after the catch. He saved his best for Week 17. I mean, this was his best game of the season. He needs 2 catches to break Puka Nakua's all-time record for receptions by a rookie, and he should be able to do that against a starter sitting Philadelphia team in the final week.
Yeah, actually, Brock Bowers is ahead of Puka Nacua now, so the rookie record is held by Brock Bowers. But yeah, Puka could. Neighbors could chase him down. One thing I was thinking about, like, Marvin Harrison was a terrible pick, obviously, right? But the people are like, oh, you can't take a rookie this high. Well, if Malik Neighbors was going at the 1-2 turn, nobody, the run out would have been, oh, wow, what ballsy 1-2 turn pick it was on Malik Neighbors. And the only reason that Marvin Harrison went ahead of Malik Neighbors in drafts, and we had him pretty close. I know Evan had him pretty close. I actually remember Evan saying you thought that maybe you could take Neighbors.
I wound up with Neighbors ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr.
And so in Evan's final rankings, he had Neighbors ahead of Marvin Harrison. The only knock you could have on Neighbors versus Harrison was really quarterback play. Turned out not to matter. Neighbors just a straight baller, and just an incredible season from him. And by the way, I do want to give credit to Tyrone Tracy too. In an impossible situation, I thought he had a really impressive season. Really impressive season. A really
he did. He had a big run in this game too. He's got big run ability. He can catch. It'll be interesting to see how things go. I mean, that's not necessarily a position that the Giants need to prioritize in the offseason, I think, because of the way that he performed.
Speaking of the offseason, Giants fans are pissed now, Evan, because this game blew their number 1 overall pick. If the draft was today, Giants would pick 3rd because they won this game, not 1st. And that could be a bit messy here for them as they need a quarterback and need a quarterback badly. Number 4 story is the Chargers. Chargers go into New England on Saturday and just roll the Patriots 40-7. Big news was the return of J.K. Dobbins. I mean, dude is like Bruce Willis in Die Hard, man. You cannot kill this guy. Back from his latest knee injury, Gus Edwards was inactive. Dobbins, fresh off IR, 19 carries, 76 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, I know Joe Burrow's probably going to win comeback player of the year, and he had an incredible season. I know he was coming back from an injury, but J.K. Dobbins continuing to come back on this like bionic knee situation is so impressive to me. Evan, what do you think of Dobbins' latest return and Chargers win in New England?
Gus Edwards had like one nice game, but for the most part, when J.K. Dobbins was out, the Chargers running game really fell flat. And that is such a big part of their offense, what they do. Every Greg Roman offense in history has always featured, has been built around the running game. So having J.K. Dobbins back, how many touches did he have here? Okay, so he had 19 carries. Yeah, he had 20 touches. I mean, that's right where they want him. And it's really promising that he came right back in, and they didn't even ease him in at all. They gave him the 20 touches right off the bat. So
Yeah.
huge development for them going forward.
Other thing, I mean, Ladd McConkey, another monster game. Ladd McConkey is now up to 2.35 yards per route run. I know we talked about Brian Thomas and the yards per route run stuff last week. Ladd is having a historic rookie season as well from an efficiency perspective. I mean, just a massive hit on both Brian Thomas and Ladd McConkey and Malik Neighbors. Chargers will either be the 5 or the 6 seed in the AFC playoffs. They need the Steelers to lose on Saturday for them to be able to move up. If that happens, I do think the Chargers should be motivated to win. I mean, you want to play this dusty Texans team here in round one. So we'll see how the Chargers play it. But if the Steelers lose on Saturday, I do think Chargers should be motivated to try to get that matchup with the Chargers there, with the Texans in round one. Number 5 story comes from Minnesota. Massive win for the Vikings over the rival Packers. Massive Darnold game, setting them up for a chance to be the NFC's number 1 seed. They are 14-2. Lions are 14-2. They will meet on Sunday night, week 18, for the number 1 seed. I don't know if you saw this video, Evan, after the game. Like Darnold did a post-game, media thing on the field. Comes in the locker room, dump water all over him, Gatorade, put him on their shoulders. I mean, how can you get rid of this guy after the way Darnold has played in favor of J.J. McCarthy? But anyways, what do you think of Vikings win over the Packers?
Franchise tag, I think, is what they're going to have to do with Sam Darnold. My biggest takeaway, I think, from this game was, so at one point in the season, I supported Matt LaFleur as the coach of the year, and that kind of occurred around when they dealt with the Malik Willis situation. Their quarterback had legitimate injuries. I thought that the Vikings severely outcoached the Packers in this game on both sides of the ball. And to me, this should lock up KOC, Kevin O'Connell, for Coach of the Year. I think that he is the winner at this point. I think it was a tight race up until now. This was a monster win. The way that – so the Packers, I think they ran the ball way too much early on. When they started throwing it, they got back within a couple points. But they ran the ball into the brick wall of the Vikings way too much. And the Vikings on Brian Flores' side, and I don't know if you give Kevin O'Connell necessarily credit for what Brian Flores does on defense. I actually kind of do. But I think that that's a debate. But either way, the Vikings went from a team that when they played the Packers earlier in the season, they played no man coverage. They played a ton of man coverage in this game. So they flipped their game plan, and it worked. And I think that the Packers just, again, ran the ball too much. They did not up the pass rate like we were kind of hoping that they would. When they did, again, they got within 2 points, but they stayed stubborn and kind of stayed true to what they'd been doing. And I think that was a big mistake, and it got them in a really big hole.
Oh, we'll get to the Packers, man. That was an inept coaching performance from the Packers. Evan's being too kind. That was a disastrous performance, but I'll get to them when we get to them. On the Minnesota side, yeah, the only injury note that I had, Aaron Jones left the game late with a quad contusion. They kind of finished the game there with Cam Akers. Sounds like Aaron Jones is going to be fine, though, and do expect him to play in that monster Week 18 game here. All right. Let's go to the NFC now. We'll go alphabetical order. Start with the Arizona Cardinals. This was the Saturday night game. Cardinals were eliminated from the playoffs already. They're playing out the string. Was hoping to get a look at Trey Benson in this game. Didn't happen. He was inactive with an ankle injury. James Conner started, even though the game was meaningless. He has to bow out with this knee injury he's been dealing with. That left Michael Carter as the feature back. But anyways, I'm bearing the lead. It finally happened. Trey McBride finally scored a touchdown. They ran like a little goal line screenish type play to him, and he finally scored a touchdown. Evan, what do you think of Cardinals game on Saturday night?
Yeah, I mean, the Cardinals are a dead team, so we were just hoping for solid fantasy stats. Marvin Harrison had a decent game. He almost got to 100 yards against the Rams, but yeah, finally Trey McBride gets the monkey off his back, and it did require Kyler Murray dropping back to pass 52 times.
Yeah.
But we got a dual fantasy relevant performance from Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, I'm curious who you'd vote for first team All-Pro at tight end, Evan, because I think you could make a case for Bowers, you could make a case for Trey McBride, and you could make a case for Kittle also. I think Trey McBride had 16 more targets in this game, 104 catches, 1,081 yards, and only one touchdown. But I'm curious if you had a vote, Evan, who do you think between Bowers, McBride, and Kittle for All-Pro?
I think I would go with George Kittle. He's had the best season of his career, and he's a way better blocker than the other two guys. So that would factor in, but no question, Bowers is deserving, Trey McBride deserving.
Let's go to Atlanta. This was the second Michael Penix start, this time a much tougher spot. Remember, his first game was home against the Giants. This was Sunday Night Football on the road at the Commies with the playoffs on the line. Falcons lose 30-24 in a wild overtime game. Evan, what do you think of Michael Penix's second NFL start against the Commanders?
I think that he's still working on timing with his receivers. I think that he has been decisive. I think that he brings a level of athleticism that Kirk Cousins just obviously could not bring in and outside the pocket. But I think he's still working with getting on the same page as a receiver from a timing standpoint, which isn't surprising. The backup quarterback, coaches always talk about this. The backup quarterback during the regular season gets like literally maybe 3 reps per practice, and so they're trying to find rhythm, and that's not surprising. But I am excited about Michael Penix going in to next season, and Bijan Robinson continues to tear it up.
So the Falcons are still technically alive. They need to beat the Panthers on Sunday and then also have the Bucs lose to the Saints. So, it's really, really unlikely. I mean, the Bucs are so likely to beat the Saints, and I don't think the Panthers are just going to lay down and die against the Falcons. So it's really, really unlikely, but they technically are still alive here. Expect the Falcons to be all out in Week 18 to win. Panthers. Big chance for Bryce Young here. No Chuba Hubbard in this game. They're facing a massive pass funnel in the Bucs. Bryce Young hits Adam Thielen for 2 touchdowns, but just couldn't get anything going with anyone else. I mean, I played Jalen Coker in the 3K in that big main event. He ran 31 routes on 35 dropbacks, couldn't do anything. Xavier Legette got 9 targets, turned that into 28 yards. The only thing that he could do was throw the ball to Adam Thielen really in this game, which was disappointing to me. Evan, what do you think of Panthers game against the Bucs?
Yeah, and the running game has been something that they've been able to lean on all season because of they have a powerful offensive line. Chuba Hubbard will get everything that's blocked and more, but without him, I mean, first of all, I don't think they really had any faith in their running game, considering how lightly they barely ran any plays in this game. By the way, too.
Yeah.
That hurt. They just didn't have the ball. The Buccaneers were just relentless. But yeah, I mean, it's not surprising in hindsight that with Raheem Blackshear and Mike Boone that they did not run the ball successfully.
There is a chance that Miles Sanders will be back here for Week 18. I don't think that matters, but he's probably an upgrade on Boone and Blackshear. Not that I'd be interested in playing Miles Sanders in Week 18, most likely anyways. Bears. This was just an embarrassing Thursday night game. And when people talk about bad Thursday night games, I mean, this is it. No touchdowns scored as Caleb and the Bears bungle the clock late again. score 3 points in a 6-3 home loss to the Seahawks. I mean, Caleb dropped back 40 times and threw for 122 yards. He took 7 sacks. He holds the ball forever. And like a lot of the good plays in this game felt like pure luck. Now, Caleb has taken 67 sacks in 16 games. NFL record is 76, set by David Carr in 2002. I understand there's a lot on the offensive line, but I think sacks are a big-time quarterback stat also, and Caleb is taking them at a just ridiculous rate. Evan, what do you think of Bears' 3-point performance on Thursday night against the Seahawks?
Well, they did cover the spread. So, because I think the spread, I think it finished at like 4.5.
Yeah.
And the Bears lost by 3. So there's some sort of an accomplishment. I don't know. I think the Bears have just been on like delete to end for a couple weeks now. And yeah, I mean that's like a legitimate concern. Are bad habits developing for a rookie quarterback? And he has not been on an upward trajectory over the course of his rookie season. And I understand all the crap that's happened around him, the coaching, turnover. The offensive line has had a million injuries. You know, they were playing with a backup left tackle and a backup left guard in this game, and the other guys, except for Darnell Wright, the right tackle, they're not good at any of the other positions. Leonard Williams just took an axe to them, the Seahawks defensive tackle. But yeah, I mean, I think that they've needed this season to be over for several weeks at this point, the Bears.
Yeah, one thing I can't put my finger on is this Cole Kmet stuff. Cole Kmet has run 125 routes over the last 4 weeks. 125 routes. 3 targets on 125 routes. Like, they're not even trying to look for Cole Kmet whatsoever, which has been quite strange to me. Seems like it should be an easier target there for Caleb Williams, but ugly. Speaking of ugly, let's go to Dallas. No CeeDee Lamb in this game. He joins Dak Prescott on the sideline. Cowboys get absolutely embarrassed in Philadelphia, 41-7. I'm just out of things to say about the Cowboys. I have nothing here on the Cowboys other than they have to play out the string in Week 17 against the Commanders. Evan, anything for you on Cowboys coming out of their latest embarrassing loss?
No, other than I thought it was funny that. Did you see the video of an Eagles fan being real close to the field before the game, talking to Jerry Jones? You're doing a great job, Jerry. We love you in Philadelphia. No, and and then the coaching stuff. Like, apparently there was a report that other teams are poking around Mike McCarthy to see if they could get him. Like, come on, guys. I think that, I mean, Mike McCarthy must have a great agent. Do you think that the Cowboys are going to end up keeping him?
I doubt it. I think they're looking for scapegoats, So, yeah, it's ugly, man. It's just really bad for Dallas right now. Rico continues to play well, and I think Rico is like just shows that you can find a running game in a lot of places, including with guys like Rico, but man, just really, really bad. Let's go to the Lions. So this game last night was meaningless for the Lions. Win or lose last night to the 49ers, all that mattered for the NFC North title and the number 1 seed is this Week 18 game against the Vikings. But that did not stop Dan Campbell. Plays all out. Some people are like, oh, they're going to rest late. That's not what Dan Campbell does. Plays all out, and the game plays out as expected. Lions offense is unreal, and the defense gets torched. I mean, this is like every week now. They score 40-something points. The other team scores 30-something points. And it's a hard way to try to win the Super Bowl, but that's the way they're probably going to have to do it here. I don't really see any help coming for them on the defensive side of the ball. Evan, what do you think of Lions game last night against the 49ers?
Yeah, and Dan Campbell after the game did admit that he really wrestled with it, whether or not to sit starters throughout the week, even up until maybe the day of. So the people that thought that there was a chance that he might do that, they weren't necessarily wrong. In the end, they were, because of the result and the final decision that Dan Campbell made. And dude, you know what? Like, he gets criticized for this, maybe going for 4th down and then it doesn't work in a certain situation. But this is what this team is built on. The players love this.
Yeah.
The players love going all out. Players want to play. The players want to go for it on 4th down, and so when you establish that as a big time part of your culture, like abiding by that, the players appreciate that.
Yeah.
If you started to reel that back in, I think the players would get pissed off. They're like, well, now he's not being
No,
genuine with us,
exactly.
So
Exactly. You can't.
not everything is math and probability. The Sims know a lot. They don't know everything though.
the there's like an old like strategy from poker. It's like if you're gonna make a mistake, make it being aggressive, right? So like I don't think anyone has a problem with Dan Campbell just being relentlessly aggressive. The thing that he doesn't do that a lot of coaches have done is, let's say you go for a fourth down, you don't get it, or you play your starters and someone gets hurt when you don't have to. You can't go turtle back into the shell then, right? You have to keep your foot on the gas and keep going, because then the players know, hey, listen, we're playing to win no matter what, no matter what, no matter what. And I think that's why he played the guys last night. David Montgomery injury thing continues to play out like kind of the way that we thought that it would. Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta just all have better floor ceiling combos, and they all score here in this game against the 49ers with David Montgomery out. And man, this Jared Goff season, I mean, he's like second in almost all these categories: passing yards, yards per completion, passer rating. He's actually the number 7 quarterback in fantasy in points per game as Jared Goff as a pure pocket passer. Really, really hard to do. Really, really wild. So crazy impressive season for Jared Goff. And Evan, we're striking back to old times here. Week 18 total. I don't know if you saw what this line opened at.
I was just going to bring that up. I wanted to let me guess.
Yes.
Because I don't. I have not looked at it yet.
Okay. The total for the Lions-Vikings Week 18 game is up. Evan, what do you think that it is?
57.5.
Oh, you looked at it.
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
I swear to God, I did not.
It is 57.5.
Boom! Let's go.
You got to give him the line, Evan.
My Over's Lord is back.
My brain is the sim, the famous line. Yeah, Lions open as a 3-point favorite and 57.5 total in what will be an awesome Week 18 Sunday night game. Packers. Okay, Evan already brought this up. I'll just give my rant here. This commitment to establishing the run from LaFleur and the Packers is completely out of control. I couldn't believe some of it. Against the best run defense in the NFL and trailing massive. I mean, we're talking about like third quarter, down 20-plus points. 1st and 10, they're running delayed handoffs to Emmanuel Wilson. That is just absolutely inexcusable. Jordan Love only dropped back 35 times, and they ran the ball 23 times with running backs, even though they were down 13-3 at half, 23 earlier in the third quarter. So just absolutely inept game plan and inept coaching from LaFleur here. And yeah, it was just absolutely terrible. Evan, anything else to add here that you didn't already say about the Packers game?
Not really. I already kind of got on them for this when we talked about the Vikings.
Yeah.
So I just really thought that this demonstrated that Kevin O'Connell deserves Coach of the Year.
What do you think if the Lions win? Would you vote Dan Campbell or Kevin O'Connell then? Let's say the Lions win. They're the number 1 seed. They win the division over Kevin O'Connell. I think Dan Campbell has a pretty good case then too.
That's fair, especially when you factor in the complete loss of the entire first string, or the loss of 80% of their first string defense.
Yeah.
That's fair. I mean, there are other guys that are deserving. I just think that right now, as we stand here today, and that's without factoring in this massive Week 18 game.
Right.
I think it's Kevin O'Connell.
So, and I also think that Kevin O'Connell will win regardless of what happens this week because they want to reward Sam Darnold in some way. This is like a team award for the Vikings. We resurrected Sam Darnold from the dead. He's no longer really meets the criteria for comeback player of the year, but Kevin O'Connell, I do think, will end out winning.
I also think that Sam Darnold should be he should absolutely finish top 5 in MVP voting.
Yeah.
If you look, he's got a better passer rating than Josh Allen. Now, there are a bunch of statistics, and none of these statistics are perfect, okay? But when you're trying to nitpick at the top, Sam Darnold has a better passer rating than Josh Allen. He's got a better completion percentage than Lamar Jackson. He has a better record than both. I know QB wins. QB wins do matter in the MVP race, that you could look at that over the course of time. I think that Sam Darnold should be actually number 3 and definitely in the top 5. And if he's not top 5, then I think it's like a mistake and an indictment of the voters.
Back to the Packers. They will be the number 6 or number 7 seed in the playoffs. I think it's worth going for number 6 so they don't have to play at Philly in round 1, but they need the Commanders to lose, and they play at the same time. So I could see the Packers playing some starters here in Week 18, but keeping an eye on the scoreboard. If Commanders are winning, I could see them pulling some starters here. Christian Watson sounded close to playing, or close-ish to playing in this game, ended up sitting out, so you get the Dontavian Wicks frustration here once again. But I think Christian Watson's probably going to be okay for the playoffs. Rams hold off Cardinals with a goal line stand there at the end. And again, for the second straight week, Rams do it surprisingly without much from Matthew Stafford. I mean, they only scored 13 points. Stafford only had 17 completions and no touchdowns. Of course, 10 of those completions to Puka Nacua. But yeah, another defensive game from the Rams. Evan, what do you think of their big win over the Cardinals?
Yeah, so they won the NFC West.
Yep.
Which seemed like, again, we could go back to that Thursday game in week 5 or whatever, where I couldn't even write the Thursday night game until like Wednesday because there were like legitimate trade rumors involving Cooper Kupp and even Matthew Stafford. We have come such a long way from that. But yeah, I mean, not a ton of huge individual takeaways from a 13-9 game.
Yeah.
But the Rams have been one of the stories of the season.
I mentioned last week it's been like around 2-1 in targets over the last month for Puka Nacua. And this game was 14-3. I mean, the gap between Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp just continues to get wider and wider and wider. Puka Nacua is up to like 3.4 something yards per route run, which is like breaking every possible metric and model. Like completely insane season from Puka Nacua, even though he missed so much time. Rams will be either number 3 or number 4 seed, which I think matters. Like, I wouldn't want to be the number 4 seed because you're going to have to play either Detroit or Minnesota. But McVay doesn't care. He rests guys. He already said he's going to rest guys pretty much. Expecting to see Jimmy Garoppolo, Blake Corum here in Week 18 for the Rams. Saints lose to the Raiders at home. I mean, even in Aiden O'Connell-led Raiders team is just massively ahead of this Saints JV team. Spencer Rattler's dead out there. I mean, he's not good, and he's throwing to USFL caliber players. Of course, other than Juwan Johnson, shout out Penn State, big game tonight for Penn State. But anyways, one thing I was looking forward to was seeing more Kendry Miller. He plays 8 snaps and then sustains a concussion. So didn't even get a good look at that. Hope he's okay. Evan, anything for you on the Saints junior varsity team that played on Sunday?
No. And, I would just say that it's kind of come out that Chris Olave is just not – it looked like midway through last week that he might have a chance to come back and play, but it sounds like it doesn't make any sense for them to bring him back anyways. He's going to be shut down, not playing Week 18.
Yeah, they keep calling Olave and Carr questionable. It would be just silly to play those guys. I did get CEH active here ahead of Jordan Mims, which I was like, that's a weird decision. We've seen CEH. But yeah, CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, back in our lives, was active for this game ahead of Jordan Mims. 49ers played out the string last night. They scored 34 points, but can't stop the Lions. 2 big stories for me from last night. First, Ricky Pearsall had his breakout game, 8-141-1 on 10 targets on Monday Night Football. Remember, for Dynasty Bros out there, Deebo Samuel likely gone this offseason, and Brandon Ayuk is coming off an ACL and MCL tears. So that's one thing, Evan, the Pearsall stuff. The second thing is this Brock Purdy injury. Another throwing elbow injury. Said his arm was on fire. They already said he's probably going to sit out Week 18. They're going to have to go to Josh Dobbs here in Week 18. So yeah, Evan, what do you think of last night? Pearsall, Purdy, anything else?
Yeah, the Pearsall breakout was huge because, man, he had gone a long stretch with doing nothing. And you don't want to see that from a rookie receiver. So him having showing the capability to have a big game, and I know that the Lions defense is way far beyond gone, and they're going to have to deal with that in the playoffs. But just to see that from Ricky Pearsall, very, very promising. I think that their 3 receiver set next year will be Jawan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, although they're going to have to re-sign Jawan Jennings. He's on a 1-year deal, and Brandon Ayuk. That's looking like their 3 receiver set. I'm worried about this Purdy thing. I mean, he has had a bunch of arm stuff. He had I think it was it considered Tommy John, the UCL. Yeah. Remember, he had another issue with his arm at one point this season. After the game, Kyle Shanahan described it as potentially they're worried that it is involving his nerve in his right throwing elbow. I mean, again, I don't pretend to be a doctor, but this stuff, is starting to really build up.
No doubt. Let's go to Seattle. Um, Seattle goes into Chicago for that Thursday night game. Geno Smith was laboring on his knee. They scored 0 touchdowns, but somehow win the game 6-3. Big news before the game was Kenneth Walker to IR with that high ankle sprain he sustained in week 16. We did not get the full Zach Charbonnet experience in this game like I kind of thought that we might. He did have an elbow injury, but still only 15 carries for Charbs, 7 for Kenny McIntosh. But even though they won as a result of what happened on the weekend, the Seahawks are now officially eliminated from the playoffs. Evan, what do you think of Seahawks game in Chicago on Thursday night?
Yeah, 6-3 game for a now dead team. Just don't really have any great takeaways.
Yeah, and Geno did have.
I think the one takeaway would be that they do seem to have some growing confidence in Kenny McIntosh.
Yeah,
as like a number 2 or 3 back.
Yeah, and they got a big season out of JSN, and I thought Geno played well enough to make the playoffs. Like they have some things that they can hang their hat on, but yeah. Commanders. Just an unreal season for Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. Cherry on top here. Sunday Night Football clinched the playoffs with a wild overtime win over the Falcons. Jaden Daniels throws for 3 touchdowns, runs for 127 yards. 34-year-old Zach Ertz catches 2 touchdowns, including the game winner. There's been some wild runouts in Commanders games this year, man. They have had a wild season that they have been on the right end of a lot. Evan, what do you think of Commanders game against the Falcons on Sunday night?
Commanders going to the playoffs for the first time since 2016, and Jaden Daniels now holds the all-time single-season rushing record for quarterbacks. Locked in OP or OROY.
Yeah, absolutely insane season from Jaden Daniels for sure. All right, let's move it over to the AFC. Start with the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson, Christmas Day game, again makes his case for MVP as the Ravens just absolutely trashed the Texans 31-2. One thing that actually stuck out to me ahead of this game was what Evan was talking about last week. Yes, Ravens defense was awful, particularly against the pass earlier in the season, but they are much healthier now and balling. They've been one of the better defenses over the last, month or so, 6 weeks. So they completely shut down Stroud here, and you get another big Lamar game. Evan, what do you think of Ravens game on Christmas?
Yeah, this game was just an absolute, it was barely even worth watching. These teams are, even though they're both going to the playoffs, these teams they're in different tiers by far, several different tiers apart. The Ravens just did whatever they wanted. There wasn't even a player for the Ravens, and they did whatever they wanted on the ground. There wasn't even a single player on the Ravens who caught more than 2 passes in this game. The Ravens are looking really good. They're in, really good health shape right now, as you mentioned, defensively, also on offense. They're right there with all the other teams that we talk about as Super Bowl contenders, no question.
Lamar was only forced to drop back 17 times in this game. But they're going to be all out here in week 18. They need to get the number 3 seed and get a home game. So I think they're going to be all out here. They're like a massive, massive favorite here. So I expect them to be all out. And meanwhile, we'll get to this next, but I expect Josh Allen to only play like 1 or 2 drives. Yeah. And so you're going to get a big Lamar game here in week 18 and another rest game for Josh Allen. You can make a case for either Lamar or Josh Allen at this point for MVP. It's going to be super interesting.
I'm going to complain again that Todd Monken seems to be getting no head coaching love. The Ravens offense has been unbelievable for a sustained period under him. In each of their last 10 wins, the Ravens have scored 30 or more points. Yeah. Their offensive production has been outrageous under Todd Monken. I think the Bears should go higher. There's a big rumor that that there's already a done deal with Ben Johnson somewhere, and then it's not the Bears. I think the Bears should go get Todd Monken.
Interesting. One note for Dynasty people, Keaton Mitchell finally got a look here with Justice Hill sidelined by the concussion. This was Keaton Mitchell's first real action since blowing out his knee last year. He did play far ahead of Rasheen Ali. Keaton Mitchell had a 28-yard catch. So just on the radar for deep Dynasty League people, Keaton Mitchell. Let's go to the Bills. Bills roll the Jets 40-14, lock up the AFC's number 2 seed. 3 total touchdowns for Josh Allen this game. He is still ahead of Lamar in the MVP race, but with the number 2 seed locked up, I think Josh Allen's going to start this game because Sean McDermott said that keeping his consecutive start streak is important to him. I don't think he's going to play more than 1 or 2 series. So Josh Allen MVP case has already been made. I don't think he's going to get to add to it this week. But anyways, Evan, what do you think of Bills' easy win over the Jets on Sunday?
I mean, he had a really nice game here, but I mean, they didn't need him really to do a whole lot. I mean, he finished with 3 all-purpose touchdowns. He had like a sneak for a touchdown early in the game. But I mean, as a team, they threw for 251, and that was including a 69-yarder from Trubisky off the bench. So,
yeah.
What have you looked at what the updated odds are?
Look,
yeah.
Josh is still ahead. I think I saw like minus 250. Don't quote me on that though.
Okay.
Something around there ahead of Lamar. But I think
because immediately after the Lamar game, it had gone to it was almost even.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, I'm very biased because I have a ticket for Josh Allen from the preseason, and also I kind of want him to win it because he hasn't won it yet, and he's gotten close a number of times, and Lamar's already won 2. To me, that kind of does matter. Yeah. I understand the argument against that. I don't know. I mean,
actually, now that I'm looking at it on FanDuel, at least Josh Allen minus 420. Lamar plus 270. So, yeah, we're out to minus 420 here on Josh Allen.
Okay, so it's separated a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to come down to the last game, I guess.
Last note on Buffalo, Curtis Samuel didn't play here, which doesn't really matter that much. But just even without Curtis Samuel, so insanely flat every week in terms of targets. 10 different guys in this game saw a target for the Bills. It creates really tough stacking stuff for playoff best ball, but you still have to do it. You still have to take shots on Buffalo guys with Allen because they are have a very good chance to go to the Super Bowl.
One other thing is that, remember we talked about whether the Bills think that MVP matters for Josh Allen? Sorry to harp on this so much, but I mean, I think people are interested. Sean McDermott talked about how he thinks that Josh Allen deserves MVP in his post-game press conference.
Yeah.
So I think the coach cares. I don't know. I'll be interested to see if they play him more than people anticipate.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see. Okay. Bengals. This was an insane game on Saturday. I mean, massive game with massive playoff implications against the Broncos. Somehow goes to overtime. Bengals survive 30-24. Crazy play at the end where Chase Brown's about to score. He goes down on purpose, hurts ankle in the process, and then the Bengals score anyway, allowing Bo Nix to come back and send the game to overtime. So Chase Brown, who was such a hero for fantasy teams, I mean, he was one of the best picks of the entire year. If he would have scored there, would have made a huge difference in fantasy finals. Instead, he goes down and gets hurt in the process. Anyways, Evan, what do you think of Bengals game against the Broncos?
Yeah, it sounds like he's going to be okay. It sounds like early in the week.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. We're going to find out. T. Higgins was an absolute beast in this one. This game was crazy because first of all, there were all kinds of clock management and going forward on 4th down sort of issues in this game. And also the Broncos really got after Joe Burrow. 15 hits and 7 sacks on Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow still had 412 yards, 3 touchdowns. And T. Higgins had maybe the best game of his career. And Jamar Chase still went over 100 too. Okay. So, it's just kind of a shame that over the course of the year, the Bengals defense let them down. And they missed opportunities. But their offense is absolute playoff caliber. I'm still hoping that they can somehow sneak into it.
T. Higgins, I mean, breaks the fantasy championship slate with 3 touchdowns. He got a ton of production in overtime. Someone's going to want to pay him $30 million plus a year on a multi-year deal. I don't know that they're he'd be real tilted, I think, to go on the franchise tag here again. So we'll see what happens. But Bengals are still alive for the playoffs. They need a lot to happen. I believe they need the Broncos and the Dolphins to both lose and the Bengals win them to get into the playoffs. I think that's around like 8% based on current market odds. So still a long shot for Bengals to make the playoffs.
If you read or heard T. Higgins' comments after the game, he was talking
Yeah.
about how he doesn't necessarily he doesn't care as much about fully maximizing monetarily, and that he really wants to stay with the Bengals. I mean, I feel like, and the way that Joe Burrow has spoken about it publicly, he's like, I would be very disappointed if we lose T. Higgins.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like they're, in a way, conspiring to be like, hey, we want to make this happen. But Mike Brown has a history of not making these kind of things happen. So
I also believe we'll talk more about this in the offseason, but I believe T. Higgins hired Jamar Chase's agent. Like T. Higgins recently fired his agent and hired Jamar Chase's agent. So they're going to take the same agent here into the offseason of negotiations, which should be super interesting. Let's go to the Browns. Home against Tyler Huntley here. In theory, a good spot for the Browns. They score 3 points. I mean, if they wanted to get an evaluation on Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I hope they've gotten it. He has been the worst quarterback I've ever seen. One of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen. I mean, just completely inept. He had 47 pass attempts in this game to DTR, 170 passing yards on 47 attempts. And I get that Njoku wasn't out there. I get that Tillman's not out there. But still, I think we can close the book here on DTR. Evan, any more thoughts on Browns game against the Dolphins?
yeah, I still am curious of how the Browns have had any optimism about DTR. It seems like they have internally, but he has just not shown it on any stage. I don't care if it's been preseason, playing late in the year. I'm with you. I think that they should give up that ghost.
Jerome Ford did get hurt in this game, hurt his ankle, but was able to come back in. So hopefully he'll be okay for week 18. Think that he will. Broncos lost that wild game we just talked about to the Bengals. Funny thing to me is this Marvin Mims stuff. I mean, Marvin Mims went nuts, 8-1-0-3-2 in this game. He has done nothing but be explosive and pretty productive when he actually plays. But Sean Payton insists on playing Little Jordan Humphrey and Devon Vele and Josh Reynolds last year and Brandon Johnson. I mean, all these guys have gotten snaps ahead of Marvin Mims, and I don't get why. But I don't just because Marvin Mims broke out here, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, now Marvin Mims is going to have a huge role going forward. That's not what Sean Payton has done. So anyways, Evan, what do you think of the Marvin Mims game and anything else on the Broncos?
Yeah, it's been curious. I mean, even as a rookie, his yards per route run was really, really strong for at least most of his rookie season. He made an unbelievable touchdown catch in double coverage in this game. He's been super explosive after the catch. He was Sean Payton's first ever draft pick, and as the Broncos coach, and they traded up for him. So just hasn't made any sense why they've been slow to heavily incorporate Marvin Mims for sure. The Audric Estime talk from Sean Payton again proved non-useful to us. Jaleel McLaughlin has been the Broncos' best back over the course of the season.
Yeah, Javonte Williams only 22 snaps here, 0 carries, 2 targets. Broncos are still control their own destiny. If they beat the Chiefs on Sunday, and I do expect the Chiefs to play backups, Broncos are in. So, yeah, good spot here for the Broncos. Likely will just need to beat a Carson Wentz-led Chiefs team. Colts. Anthony Richardson could not go here due to back and foot issues, so we got the Wacko Flacco game, and the Colts lose to the lowly Giants, eliminated from the playoffs. I mean, it's a tough way to go out, man, losing to the Giants to ruin your playoff chances. The Pittman Downs thing was frustrating for me. I played Downs a bunch and did not play Pittman, and Pittman is the one that went off 109-1 on 10 targets. Downs only 322-0 on 4 targets. Evan, what do you think of Colts' loss to the Giants?
I think that Gus Bradley is going to get fired as the Colts defensive coordinator, and I think deservedly so. There is no way that you can let this happen. And I know that the Colts made a bunch of mistakes offensively. Flacco had 3 turnovers. But, I mean, there's just no way that you can let Drew Lock stomp you like this in a game that really mattered. And I don't think that they're going to fire Shane Steichen. He almost won Coach of the Year last year.
Yeah.
He's a young, good offensive mind. You want to keep him hitched to Anthony Richardson. I think Gus Bradley got to go.
Yeah. Another big JT game here. He really came on and won championships for teams that were able to survive kind of a rocky early season from JT. Let's go to the Texans. This was rock bottom for the Texans, man. They scored 2 points on a safety in a home loss to the Ravens. And you can make excuses for this Texans team. Offensive line play has been horrible. No Steph Diggs. Tank Dell's out now. But man, this is not a playoff caliber team right now. The only reason the Texans are in the playoffs is because they play in the AFC South, which is so bad. So they're locked into the number 4 seed. But I actually think they're going to play guys in Week 18 because they got to try to figure something out on offense. Like, they can't rest here in Week 18 and then go into the playoffs, I don't think, without trying to figure something out on offense. So I think they're going to play until they put something good on the board, until they sustain a good drive or something like that in Week 18. Evan, what do you think of Texans' humiliating loss to the Ravens last week?
I just think about how optimistic I was about the Texans before the season and CJ Stroud, and that has really gone by the wayside, man. You say it every week at this point. Like, at some point, like, the buck has to be passed on to CJ Stroud because he has absolutely taken a step back from his rookie season. There's just no question about that. I was hoping that Nico Collins could have a big game here, and he was disappointing. The running game has been kind of smoke and mirrors. A lot of long runs from Joe Mixon this season, but sustaining the run. I think that Bobby Slowick could get fired after the season. I think he should get fired, actually, after the season. I think they're headed for making some changes.
Yeah, and that's why, to me, like, the 5 seed in the AFC is pretty, like, I'd be going for it if I was those teams that were, like, jockeying for position. I'd want to play the Texans here in round 1. Let's go to Jaguars. Jaguars get their 4th win of the season by beating Mason Rudolph and the Titans at home. Story, of course, is just the continued dominance of Brian Thomas Jr. We're up to 5th overall now in our dynasty rankings on Brian Thomas Jr. Just turned 22 a couple months ago. I mean, Neighbors, Ladd, Brian Thomas, just some of the best dynasty assets you could possibly have. Such an impressive rookie wide receiver class. Also in this game, Tank Bigsby, 15-11 in carries ahead of Travis Etienne. Evan, what do you think of Jaguars' win over the Titans?
I think that the lone takeaway is regarding Brian Thomas. It's, this hot hand committee between the two RBs, Etienne and Bigsby, and Brian Thomas, his finish to the season. Where's he going to go in drafts next year? He's going to be a first-round pick with Trevor Lawrence coming back. The big rumor is that the Jaguars are going to actually get Ben Johnson, and they're going to give him a ton of control. You fire Trent Balk. Obviously, you clear out the coaching staff. That would be a really fun fit. Bring Ben Johnson to Jacksonville with a healthy Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas.
Yeah, that'd be super interesting for sure. And they get Christian Kirk back also. They're not, like, totally dead. They have some pieces, at least, for sure. Chiefs. This was the Christmas game, one of the Christmas games. I think this Chiefs game showed, like, personnel matters. You lose Rashee Rice, you lose Marquise Brown, you lose Pacheco. But then all of a sudden, now you get Marquise Brown out there with Worthy, Hopkins, Kelsey, and Mahomes shreds in Pittsburgh. Like, it matters the weapons that Mahomes has around him, and you get a huge Mahomes game here. I don't think it's a coincidence that with Marquise Brown back and Hopkins playing and Worthy playing and Kelsey playing and Pacheco playing, that Mahomes set a season high in passer rating, threw for his 2nd most yards of the season, tied a season high with 3 touchdowns with those guys back. So yeah, Chiefs offense is certainly trending up here heading into the playoffs. Evan, what do you think of their game on Christmas?
Well, it's funny. They played on Christmas. Their next meaningful game, because they're going to rest starters in Week 18, is not going to be until January 18th or 19th.
It's crazy.
That is a long, long resting period. And look, Andy Reid has shown over the course of his career, he's like the best coach of all time coming off of a bye. That's fine for them. Like, they're gonna be fine. They have a lot of chemistry as a team, and they've really hit their stride offensively at the right time. But man, that is a long rest period. December 25th through January 18th. That's a long time.
For sure. And give a chance Mahomes' ankle or whatever get healthy. I think it's clearly like the right move for them to rest guys, and I think that they
Yeah.
will. The Marquise Brown stuff, man. In week 16 was his first game of the season back from IR. 15 routes on 46 Mahomes dropbacks, right? It's only 33% of the routes. 8 targets, though. I mean, insane. 8 routes on 8 targets on 15 routes. Week 17, this Christmas game, 19 routes on 39 Mahomes dropbacks, so up to 49% of the routes. Saw 7 targets, really high TPRR, targets per route run once again. So I like Marquise Brown for the playoff best ball stuff. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And I should also note, second straight game, Kareem Hunt was kind of ahead of Pacheco in carries, which I didn't expect to see, but there's certainly have a lot of trust in Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, I think that Pacheco hasn't necessarily looked all the way back to his old self. That's something that this long rest period could help. Also, Chris Jones didn't even play
Yeah.
on Christmas Day, and he is a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. By the way, have you talked with Ryan Reynolds about Defensive Player of the Year, because it seems really wide open?
Yeah, I think it's either going to be Watt or Surtain.
Okay.
Yeah, I think those two guys both have a really good case, and it's hard for me to see anybody else sticking in there. But yeah, I mean, Chris Jones always has somewhat of a case, I think, too. But yeah, I think Surtain or Watt would be the pick for me. Um, Raiders. Raiders go into New Orleans and face, the junior varsity Saints. Basically all second and third stringers out there. But still, AOC was solid. They ran the ball well. I can't believe this Amir Abdullah arc. Like late season, Amir Abdullah going nuts, over 140 total yards. Raiders win 25-10. Also in this game, Brock Bowers set the record for most catches by a rookie in the season, breaking the one that Puka set last year. We'll see if Neighbors can catch him here in week 18. Evan, any thoughts on Raiders game in New Orleans?
Yeah, and Jacoby Myers had a solid bounce back from a really disappointing week 16. But yeah, I mean, not a ton of takeaways here for another dead team playing another dead team. Raiders over the Saints.
Let's go to the Dolphins. So Tyler Huntley started this game in Cleveland and played much better than I thought that he would. I mean, much better. This was probably Tyler Huntley's best game since that Ravens-Packers game where it actually started a few years ago. I mean, even late in the game, when they didn't even need to throw, he threw it to ice the game. And Tyler Huntley did this without Waddle, without much from Devon Achane. There was a lot of Raheem Mostert here. Evan, what do you think of Tyler Huntley and the Dolphins game up there in Cleveland?
Yeah, he was really efficient. I mean, I think that this adds to his resume that maybe he can, get another number 2 quarterback job at some point. The Dolphins are technically still alive, right?
The Dolphins need to win and have the Broncos lose, and then they have a chance, and then they're in. Yes.
Okay. So Tua being out for this game came out late. It
Yeah.
was like on Saturday.
Yep.
Yeah. So I wonder.
Yeah, and they're calling him questionable. McDaniel already said that Huntley's going to start out with getting the reps
Okay.
at quarterback, and they'll see how it goes with Tua. So yeah, it sounds like Tua is dealing with something serious with his hip.
Yeah. I mean, hip. I mean, that's not good considering his history. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's related. Hopefully, it's not. I do know that they're optimistic about getting Jalen Waddle back for Week
Yeah.
18.
Yeah, they said Waddle was mostly held out because of the conditions. Like it was a wet field in Cleveland,
Right.
and they were asking for aggravation if they put Waddle out there. And yeah, so I do think Waddle will play Week 18 also. Patriots, more of the same from the Patriots. This was a home game Saturday night against the Chargers. They get cooked 40-7. The only funny part of this was this pregame report. And since I have no life, I'm sitting here reading the pregame reports, and Gerard Mayo goes on radio show and says Antonio Gibson would start. That Ramondre was getting benched for the fumbles. Antonio Gibson would start. Well, guess what happens? Ramondre starts and is the feature back for most of the game. Antonio Gibson did get there late in garbage time, which made it okay, I guess. But Mayo is just a mess. Now they're talking about they have the number 1 pick now because the Giants blew it. Should they sit Drake May here in Week 18 to preserve that number 1 pick? But yeah, Evan, what do you think of Patriots game against the Chargers?
Yeah, not a good game for Drake May against the Chargers. It was like in the fourth quarter of this game, Patriots fans were cheering "Fire, fire, Mayo." I
Yeah.
mean, it's only been 1 year.
Yeah.
He has been kind of like a disaster with his rhetoric in front of the microphone, and not good vibes there at all.
He threw the offensive coordinator under the bus at one
Right.
point. Yeah.
And I mean, I don't really think super highly of the offensive coordinator, but we're already talking about firing him after 1 year. That's tough.
Yeah.
I think the offensive coordinator is definitely getting fired.
Yeah. There was some talk they want to get a look at Joe Milton. So yeah, it would not surprise me if they sat Drake May in this game to try to preserve the number one pick. Jets. Jets get smoked in Buffalo 40-14. I don't know if you saw this Garrett Wilson stuff. Remember Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers got like into a big fight in training camp. This was back in August. And then there was a report pregame that like Wilson thinks that Aaron Rodgers has been icing him out, not throwing it to him even though he's open. And the report included something that like if Aaron Rodgers is back, Garrett Wilson's going to request a trade. Then Garrett Wilson goes down and catches a touchdown. Devontae Adams doesn't. So I don't know. Not good right now in New York, obviously. Evan, any thoughts for you on Jets and the Garrett Wilson stuff coming out of this one?
Yeah, I mean the Jets, like God, man, they have a lot of work to do. I mean, they're going to need to start looking at a new quarterback. They got to hire a head coach. They got to figure out this situation with Garrett Wilson. Are they going to bring Devontae Adams back? And I mean, there's no way that you can trust the Jets to handle all those situations correctly.
I mean, when you go all in for the Super Bowl and you don't even make the playoffs, like it's a
And don't
mess.
even come close to the playoffs.
It is an absolute mess. Steelers. 3 straight losses now for the Steelers. They were really never in it in this home game on Christmas against the Chiefs. And they did get George Pickens back, but they only really got one big play out of him. Russ threw a really bad red zone pick, took a ton of sacks. So not the Steelers' best performance here. And they're kind of reeling their way into the playoffs at this point. Schedule has gotten very difficult for them in their defense. They played 3 very good teams in 11 days. But yeah, Evan, what do you think of Steelers' loss to the Chiefs back on Christmas?
Yeah, they 3 games in 11 days, and they lost all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Since Week 12, the Steelers' defense has given up almost 28 points per game. So their defense has fallen off. Joey Porter, their big physical press corner, who they used to deal with plus-sized receivers, he has been injured. I'm worried that that's like maybe a multi-week injury. And you're right. I mean, they made it close a little bit early on, but I mean the Chiefs absolutely left the Steelers in the dust, and now people are calling the Steelers frauds and everything. Yeah, I mean they are on a downward trajectory.
Yeah, it's crazy how much better Jalen Warren looks than Najee Harris, just to the eye, right? And like I know Najee's been okay this year and had some really good games, but man, I'd love to see Jalen Warren get 20 plus touches in a game, similar to the Chase Brown stuff.
I think that Jalen Warren hasn't been healthy for a majority of the year, but he is now. And I mean, he is explosive and he's shifty and he can play in the passing game. And he just moves at a different rate on the field than Najee Harris does,
Yeah, Steelers are in the playoffs. Seeding is still up in the air. Now, this is the Saturday game. Both the Ravens and the Steelers both play on Saturday. If the Ravens win, and they play first, if the Ravens win on Saturday, Steelers will have nothing to play for if they don't care about 5 versus 6. Now, if the Ravens go out and lose, Steelers can still win the AFC North and get the 3 seed. So, stuff to watch there on Saturday. Some moving parts between motivation, what happens in the Ravens game, which will lead to what the Steelers might do. Last team is the Tennessee Titans. I mean, even against the Jaguars, the NFL's worst pass defense, one of the worst defenses overall. Titans score 3 points in the first half at Jacksonville, lose 20-13. Big story to me was Tajee Spears finally getting like a full workload, gets the start, carries it 20 times for 95 yards, catches 3 balls, but he left early with a concussion. Like he could have had a much, much, much bigger game, could Tajee Spears. They already ruled him out for week 18, which is a bit scary with the concussion. But yeah, Evan, what do you think of Titans game against the Jaguars?
Well, did I see it right? Or did I dream this that Brian Callahan said that both Will Levis and Mason Rudolph are going to play in week 18?
Correct. He wants to get a look at both of them, allegedly.
Nice. That's going to be a lot of fun right there, right? I mean, geez, man. Yeah, I mean, we like Chig. Chig kind of came on strong down the stretch, and he had a fine game here. Calvin Ridley was decent, but I mean, this is another dead team playing two bad quarterbacks at the same time. Do you think that they'll put them on the field at the same time?
It's like, what are they trying to figure out? And, the quote from
Right,
Callahan was like, "Oh, we know we want to make sure, we want to be 100% sure what we
right.
have with our quarterbacks." You don't have enough tape on Will Levis yet, It's like, but whatever, doesn't really matter. All right, that is going to do it for this Week 17 edition of the Team by Team show. I'm sorry, Week 18 edition of the Team by Team show. Going forward, this show will sustain, but will only be covering the teams that are in the playoffs. So next week, we will go team by team through the teams that are still alive here in the playoffs. Also, I got to give a shout out. The beautiful videos that you watch on YouTube are edited by one producer, Ryan. Turn 20, the $20 best ball on DraftKings, turned into a 100K score with, I believe, like a 14th or 15th place finish in the DraftKings $20 best ball. Absolutely insane run.
Awesome.
He did show up for work today. Anytime somebody has a big score, I always get worried they're going to retire on me. He did show up for work today. And so shout out to producer Ryan, 100K score, absolutely insane. All right,
Huge congrats.
4, Evan. Producer Luke. Producer Ryan. I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.